Greetings. In this lesson, we'll talk about sculpting in Maya as opposed to modeling, and we'll talk about painting a surface as opposed to creating a UV map. And we'll ultimately create a sugar skull using some basic sculpting methods, and we'll paint directly on that surface. First, let's review the tools. There are two ways, very basic ways to sculpt. The first is that we'll talk about is the soft select method. So I'm going to create just a basic plane, and I'm going to scale this up, and I'll hide my grid just so it's easier to see. And we know that if we pick a vertex, we can pull that up and move that vertex. If we grab two, we could pull both those up, and we could rotate or scale the position of those vertex. But everything's moving just at a 1-to-1. If I pick a vertex and tap the B key, not hold the B key, but just tap it, you'll see this yellow to orange gradient. And I'm going to double click now the move tool, and we see the tool settings open up. I'm going to set my tool settings next to the outliner. So I'm going to put that right there. And I'm just going to tap my outliner to minimize it. And we're just going to look here at the tool settings. Let me show you that one more time. So we have our outliner open. I double click the move tool, which is where we will find the settings for soft select. And because we'll be looking at them, I'm going to just set them here next to the outliner. Grab it and move it over till you see that blue bar. Missed it. And now it's sitting here. Now there's too much space. We could pull this over. Right, and pull this over and minimize that outliner. So right, minimize, maximize the outliner, minimize the tool settings, and we have the move tool selected. And if you come down to soft select, we can see this. Here is the color gradient, yellow to red. And now when we pull, you see that there's fall off. I'm going to tap the B key to turn that off, right? So there is no soft select. I'll hit undo. Tap the B key to turn soft select on. You can see here that it's now on, right? When I tap the B key, see that soft select is turning off and on. When it's on, it pulls, and we have a gradient, an averaging of that translate. I'm going to hit undo, and we can change the size by holding the B key and scrubbing left to right. So I'm holding the B key and scrubbing left to right. And now we'll pull that up, right? And it's larger, and you can make it even the size of the whole surface. And now we get this great big averaged smooth surface. I'm going to come back, undo that. I'm going to open the input. Now, when we're sculpting, it typically requires a dense mesh. So I'm going to give myself more subdivisions. And we'll see now when we pull, I'm going to hold the B key to pull this down. And you see you get a nice smooth gradient because we have more components, right? So there's more information. And then don't forget that you can also scale and also rotate. So you can get some interesting organic shapes just using that soft select. I'm going to hit the undo. And you oftentimes will want to do it with symmetry on. So you can see here we have symmetry on, and I can pick up and do that across the axis. So that is soft select. Pretty straightforward. Let me just review. I have a dense mesh, turning symmetry off. I'll right click, choose the vertex, tap the B key to turn soft select on or off. You see it coming on and off here. Hold down the B key to scale that up and down. And then we can translate, we can rotate, and we can scale. I'm not sure what that would be, but you can create some pretty quickly create some organic shapes just using the soft select. B key, tapping the B key turns it on and off. Holding the B key and scrubbing left and right changes the size of the brush. You can do that manually here, right? We can manually turn it on and off. If I grab my vertex, I can manually turn that on and off here. That's the equivalent of tapping the B key. I can manually change the size here. That's the same as holding the B key and scrubbing left to right. Yeah, so on and off, and then the size. And you can always hit reset if you want to get back to the beginning. So that's soft select. Let me just do one more shape. So for instance, if we were to grab this vertex here and pull it up, you're just getting a one-to-one correlation, right? But if I tap the B key, and I'm going to make this smaller, I'm going to hold the B key and scrub till my brush is smaller. And then we could pull that up. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger, and we'll get an egg shape going here. And I'm going to scale that together. And so, right, very quickly, you can get a nice organic shape if we were after an egg, for instance. Soft select. Create some primitives, select the vertexes, tap the B key to turn it on and off, hold the B key, scrub left, right to change the size. You can always double click your move tool to see the tool settings. It opens up independently, and we can set it back in here. Let me open the outliner, that'll make it easier. Set it back in there. Oops, now I got this in the wrong place. Pull that back off, don't worry if that happens. And we've got it divided here, but that's okay. Pull down to soft select, turning it off and on, changing your fall off radius. So give that a shot. The other tool that we'll use is actually called the Sculpt tool. And using soft select is a form of sculpting, but we also have a tool called the Sculpt tool. So once again, I'm going to scale that up. Because we're sculpting, we know a dense mesh is better, so I'll put this at 50 all around. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those tool settings and come to the Sculpting tab. There are a whole host of sculpt tools, but for this project, we're just going to limit ourselves to the very first one. All it does is push, pull, and smooth. And that's all we'll need to complete this week's assignment, is to be able to push, pull, and smooth. So I'll select that. We see we've got a brush, and same idea. I'm holding the B key and scrubbing left, right. And when I drag that across there, it's pulling. Now, I'm going to hold down the M key and show you we can make that less. And if I hold down the M key and pull it down even more, we've got less. Let's come over here to the M key, and I'm holding the M key and just pulling up. And now it's even higher. Let's do one more M key, pull that way up. And now you see we're getting those higher. M key, pull it down. You get just a very little bit. I can double click my Sculpt tool, and we can see symmetry is turned on here. It doesn't work to turn on symmetry here. So if we want symmetry on, we have to turn it on in the tool settings. And then here's the manual way of changing the size, which is the B key, scrubbing left, right. The manual way of changing the strength, which is the M key, and you're scrubbing up and down. Now, by default, this Sculpt tool is pulling, but if we hold down the Control key, it pushes. Now, again, if I hold the M key and pull that up, and now hold the control key and push that down, we get a very deep push, right? Now, we don't want edges or vertices overlapping, and this will give me an opportunity to talk about the third way we can use the basic sculpt tool, which is to smooth. So if I hold down the shift key, now I can smooth out and make sure that vertices aren't overlapping, or just for the idea of smoothing. And then, whoops, right, I can knock these down, and right, we can kind of create a vignette of some mountains, right, pulling that up, smoothing it down, changing the brush size, changing the brush strength, and you can begin to sculpt. So give that a shot. Let me just review real quick. We created a polyplane. We came into the inputs of the channel box and changed the subdivisions. We need a dense mesh. What it's doing is pushing and pulling vertexes. Came into the Sculpt tab, click the Sculpt tool, and B key, left, right is changing the brush size. M key, up, down is changing the strength. By default, it pulls. If I hold down the control key, it pushes. And if I hold the shift key, it smooths. So create some primitives, use the soft select method and the sculpt tool to practice shaping your sculpt.